Well, it's surprising that everything gets done in a day. 49 galleries, they come in from all around the world, essentially, the work, and it's very efficient. The fair's been going for over 12 years, so it's pretty down pat. This is the second year that it's been in the Viaduct Event Centre in this beautiful space, and it's owned now by international owners, Tim Etchells and Sandy Angus. So they own a number of fairs around the world, so it's really given it quite an international feel, and they certainly know how to run a fair.
Aotearoa Art Fair director Sue Weymouth, just hours before this transformation, just hours before its opening.
Tell me about the economic impact of the creative art sector here in New Zealand.
Well, the art fair has a significant impact on the arts in Aotearoa. It's really the only contemporary art fair in the country. It's the biggest cultural event in the year. Last year we had over $4 million worth of sales, which is significant for galleries. It's great for artists, and then also for the city. We bring in a lot of people from Australia. They stay in the hotels, they eat in the restaurants, and a significant amount come from around the motu as well.
And front and centre at this year's Aotearoa Art Fair is Māori art and artists.
There's more Māori artists than we've ever had at the fair, so it's really exciting. Starting with two incredible sculptures at the front of the fair by Brett Graham and Bob Yankee.
And is that in recognition, I guess, of the greater recognition of Māori art and artists?
I think it's probably reflective of what's happening around the world. You saw it last year at Venice Biennale, where we had 8 Māori artists were representing New Zealand, and Mata Aho, who won the largest prize in the world with the Lion Gold Lion Award. So it's phenomenal what Māori and Indigenous artists are doing.
One of those who presented at last year's Venice Biennale was Waiuku-based sculptor Brett Graham.
It's interesting because there's been quite a focus on Indigenous art in the last Biennales, sort of in these world events. So there were actually 5 artists involved in Venice last year. So I had work right next to my father, which was very exciting for me, because Dad's 96 and been a huge presence in my life.
With your father, obviously, Sandy Adset, these are such well-known names, Māori artists, and
yes,
it feels like they're finally getting their moment in the sun. Yeah,
absolutely. It's been great to see that. Every gallery in the country now isn't sort of complete, their collection complete without that generation of artists. So, on the other hand, they're all in their 90s, or many of them are past now. It's really just Sandy and Dad who are still alive, but still it's great to see so much focus on the work, because they're often described as modernists, and they certainly looked at Western art, but what they created was quite unique. That sort of marriage between Māori art, whakairo, raranga, and then Western art. And so I believe what they created was very unique for Aotearoa, an important part of our story.
You've become a leader of this generation yourself.
Oh, that's kind of you. I'm amazed at what I can get away with. This work is sort of a critique of our great white fathers, and in this case Wakefield, and the irony that he came up with systematic colonisation while he was sitting in Newgate prison. And of course the irony that wealthy neighbourhoods, people from them always want to build prisons, but they don't want to build them in their vicinity. And then this work, which I've called The Homemaker, which is a made-up word meaning the homemaker, is sort of a pun on how Wakefield brought settlers from England and elsewhere to Aotearoa to build homes, but had no place for Māori in his planned settlements. So this is actually not a lighthouse, it's actually the watchtower at Pāremorema prison.
It is too.
But it's, of course, when you put the weatherboards on, it turns it into a colonial structure and talks about that history here. So
those extra layers of mātauranga, what do they add to Māori artists' work, and is this why it's becoming so popular?
As Selwyn Muru would say, ka pupu ake te Māori mai konei, the life force that we put into our work comes from this land, and we generate stories about this land unmistakably and unashamedly. So I think that's the main difference.
Bob Yankee also has a piece at the entrance of the fair. It's called Ground Zero. Initially created in 2019, it uses neon tubing and mirrors to create a sense of infinity. And it's a statement about the whenua, or land taken from Māori. As he says, it represents areas where Māori have zero land left. As well as being a renowned artist in his own right, Bob has also taught for more than 3 decades at Massey University.
I mean, there was a time when, kōwhaiwhai was shunned within, the mainstream art galleries. But there's a bit of a change happening, and it's actually nice to see Māori art being recognised for its value in terms of not only aesthetics, but for Māori art, I think to be Māori art, it has to have a narrative, and that's got a narrative, So it's grounded in whakapapa, it's grounded in narration, and that's the beauty, I think, of Māori art. It continues to do that,
Do you sense that there's a greater appreciation for that narrative these days?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, well, it's hard to say, because a lot of gallery, elitist galleries would say, oh yeah, narrative's important, but I don't know. I have my doubts, but I mean, it's important for us. I mean, it's important for us to create our stories and to make known our views of the world.
It's not just culturally significant, there's real market demand behind this Māori art renaissance. Gallerist Tim Melville has been selling contemporary Māori art for years, and he says interest is soaring.
It feels, timing-wise, particularly for Māori art, it's a great opportunity to showcase Māori artists.
Māori artists are having they're having a moment. We've always been here, but suddenly we're being looked at in a different way.
Has that interest transferred into sales?
Yeah. Gosh, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's hard at the moment with the economy being what it is, but in general terms, yes, it has. And I've shifted my gallery's focus to being Māori-centred. I have the confidence now to be able to show predominantly Māori artists and Indigenous artists, which 5 years ago even, you would not have thought about doing. But the interest is there.
What were the barriers before, and how has it changed now?
Barriers before? Like you could even almost say it's racism. The people who, there was a Eurocentric view of what constituted great New Zealand art, we can put it that way. And so Māori artists' work was often seen as craft or folkloric art, or it wasn't valued in the same way. And it was, almost willful, some of the way that art was valued. And certainly you saw it in the auction market. You could pick up a Sandy Adsett kōwhaiwhai painting for next to nothing. And this is a man who showed at last year's Venice Biennale and has since been revalued and reevaluated. That whole era of the Māori modernists through the 60s and 70s, they were revolutionary. At the time, it wasn't noticed. And now they are achieving fantastic prices at auction. And often that's when the shift happens, because basically most of the collectors in this country are Pākehā, and most of my clients are Pākehā. And so my job is to sort of represent a Māori worldview and show people how beautiful the work is that we make. And as auction prices rise, interest rises, people follow the money.
Yeah, so the pieces that are being bought now, are they as investment pieces, or is it because of the modi of the art? Or
I want to think it's because of the modi of the art. I suspect a lot of the big numbers go for investment purposes, but that's okay, we'll take that. There are big name artists out there, Shane Cotton, Ralph Hōtere, Michael Parikowhai, who have been achieving good prices and holding the line for all of us. But there are artists coming up now. Star Gossage, for instance, one of her works is just here. She's, over the $50,000 mark. So, and she's been working for 20 years. She's been noticed now. Nephi Tupaia, who will be showing at the art fair, she's a relatively new artist, trained by Sandy Adset, called Whai painting. But for the first time in the entire run of my gallery, we had a sellout show on opening night with her show last year. So there's something in the air. There's something in the air. People are sitting up and taking notice.
The surge in Māori art isn't only about artists, it's also about collectors. Artist and Season Gallery co-director Jade Townsend says they're seeing more Māori buyers enter the market, which in turn fuels the ecosystem.
Something that I do think has been neglected are Māori collectors. I think that's been really overlooked and something that we really wanted to nurture with Season, because Māori are architects and doctors, financial advisors and lawyers and accountants, and we don't discriminate who we sell works to, but we do feel a responsibility that every work that is placed into someone else's guardianship, they respect and understand the politics of that piece.
What are some of those conversations? What are the questions that you keep getting asked, or what is it people want to know about Māori artwork?
People often want to know about training in a kind of like commercial setting. The conversation kind of can often skewer over to, will this artist continue to develop and make shows? Are they a committed artist? That sort of applies to any artist that you're showing. But a lot of the time people are really trying to connect with the artists, so they do want to know their hapu, iwi, but also what other, where else they might descend from, whether they're, like myself, Māori and English and Irish.
If you hadn't been closely following the art scene in Aotearoa, and you go along to the art fair, do you think people would be surprised by the breadth of and diversity of the art, of the amount of it?
Will they be surprised? I think they'll be impressed and relieved that what the art fair does and what we will be trying to do at our booth is unfold a range of negotiations and relationships that we believe to be very natural, and that there's a rightness to having Māori artists alongside non-Māori artists. There's these examples of how you can live alongside very political work in your house, and that's not a huge leap to do something like that. So what's really amazing about the fair is how we're able to unfold all of these different ways that you can live alongside art, and that hopefully it sparks sort of like ideas in people to go home and reimagine the walls of their houses as opportunities for telling their politics and the value systems that they believe in.
From rising sales to global awards, Māori art is having a moment, and this year's Aotearoa Art Fair is its biggest stage yet.
That's the exciting thing about the art fair, is seeing younger generation of Māori artists. When I was at art school, you could count the number of Māori art exhibitions a year on one hand, and now there's 5 a week, all over the place, and it's fantastic to see.
I can see it in your face. It's exciting, yeah?
It's very exciting.